Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking part in this live teletown hall with Congressman Scott Tipton. Over the course of this call, Congressman Tipton will provide an update on some of the work he is doing in Washington on behalf of Colorado's 3rd Congressional District. He will also take your questions on the issues that are on your mind. If you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad now, and we will get through as many questions as we can during the course of the call. Again, as people are coming in, this is a live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton, and thank you for joining us. Over the course of this call, Congressman Tipton will provide an update on some of the work he is doing in Washington on behalf of the 3rd Congressional District, as well as take your questions on the issues that are on your mind. If you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. With that, we'll go ahead and start with some opening remarks from Congressman Tipton.
Thank you, Josh, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking time to join us this evening. As I know many of you are aware, a lot of activity is going on in Washington, and wanted to be able to give you a bit of an update on some of those issues and some of the legislation that we've been working on this year. I believe all of us are very aware it's dominating the news cycle right now in terms of the impeachment process that's going on. Interestingly, when they moved to the formal stage of impeachment, we had Republicans and Democrats vote no on it. However, the majority ruled and proceeded with the formal stage of impeachment. I think there was great disappointment in terms of the secrecy of some of the hearings through the Intelligence Committee on how that was handled in terms of having the free flow of information for all Americans to be able to understand. Because every one of us agrees that any allegations of foreign influence on our democratic process must be taken seriously, and we do need to know the issues and the information that's going to be available. On the charges of quid pro quo, I think it is worthy of note that Ukraine did receive the financial aid that had been promised. No investigations on the Bidens are being taken place, and President Zelensky just this week had issued another statement noting that he felt no pressure out of the administration. So in terms of the quid pro quo, what we have heard in terms of testimony has been second and third-hand information that is coming forward, and certainly does not, in my estimation at least, rise to the level of an impeachable offense. However, it appears that the Speaker is now going to move this to the floor and ultimately, more than likely, on to the United States Senate for the prosecution end of it. But I think that many Americans, and particularly those I've had the opportunity to visit with across our district, are concerned as anything being done in Washington beyond the impeachment process. We've got a lot of important issues that certainly impact our district, our state, and our country that do need to be able to be addressed. One of the most important issues that we certainly have in our district are for veterans, and to make sure that we're fulfilling the promise to the people who have been willing to be able to put their lives on the line for us. I've introduced or co-sponsored a variety of bills to be able to address veterans' issues for our folks at home. One of those is to be able to provide low-income veterans dental care, to be able to reimburse ambulance service rides for veterans as well. We do have the NDAA bill, which is going to be moving to the conference committee, and it does fortunately have included in that provision something to be able to deal with burn pit legislation as well. And we need to make sure that we're taking care of our Vietnam veterans as well, that we're exposed to Agent Orange, and I've introduced legislation to be able to do that as well. Another big issue that is currently affecting many of our households in Colorado, and especially in our rural areas, is the continued challenge for broadband access. There was a time when that was something that was considered a luxury. It has now moved to the point of necessity for education, for our businesses, for health care, to make sure that we're having that same access to economic prosperity and for the lives of our families as well to be improved. To that end, I've recently introduced legislation called the Rural Broadband Act, which would eliminate some of the regulations which are inhibiting the ability for the broadband build-out in our remote areas of Colorado. This would provide for better coordination between the FCC and the USDA to be able to make sure that regulatorily we aren't having redundant spending, but making sure that we are actually building out that internet and ensuring that rural communities will have access to broadband, which is necessary in the 21st century. Along with access to the internet Coloradoans obviously rely on a robust energy market to be able to provide all of us with reliable and affordable power to our homes, to our businesses. And our state is doing a remarkable job in terms of lowering the environmental footprint that we have in terms of energy production through new technologies that we're seeing in traditional energy development and investing in new renewable projects as well. Pleased to be able to report, as many of you know, we passed one of the first pieces of legislation for hydroelectric power in the Small Rural Hydroelectric and Jobs Act, which was signed into law by President Obama to be able to expand those opportunities as well. By continuing, I believe, to embrace that all of the above strategy when it comes to energy in the country, we have the ability to not only develop our resources, but also to be able to export those positive resources to other countries as well, to be able to lower their footprint when it comes to carbon output in the world, and to be able to address some of the worst polluters around the world. Prescription and illegal drug abuse is obviously a foremost issue for a lot of our communities. Was recently reminded of that at a town hall meeting in Custer County. Learned of some problems that they'd had with opioid abuse in that community and how it affects every one of our communities, no matter the size, and every family in a community is going to be impacted by that. We're able to successfully pass the ALTO Act to be able to help address some of those concerns. We've held over 30 town hall meetings in regards to the opioid crisis in Colorado in the 3rd Congressional District to be able to address that. This will be an ongoing long-term problem to be challenged by every community and family to make sure that we're doing what we can to be able to reduce the abuse and the challenges and harm that comes from opioid abuse. And lastly, Colorado is enjoying a period of historic economic growth. I've often noted that we've had two economies in Colorado. Toward Denver, a lot of our resort areas have continuously done well, but the rest of rural Colorado has had an economic challenge. Well, we're finally starting to be able to see real economic growth going into our rural communities. Many of you probably saw the report that came out saying that Colorado had a 2.6% unemployment rate. Businesses across our state are competing now for workers, which means higher paychecks, an opportunity for our families to be able to prosper. But as good as this is, it can always get better. And one of the ways to be able to address that is to make sure that with our trading partners that we do have not only free trade but fair trade as well. We do have the USMCA, which we hope will be coming to a vote on the floor of the House of Representatives soon. It's already been approved by Mexico. Canada has already given temporary approval, waiting for the U.S. to be able to move its legislation. It, on a very conservative basis, is estimated to be able to create another 175,000 jobs in the U.S. So something that will be good for our economy, something that will be good for jobs, and good opportunity in the 3rd Congressional District as well. So those are a few of the issues that we've been working on recently. Do appreciate all of you taking the time to be able to join us and look forward to your questions.
And we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. This is a live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. And over the course of this call, Congressman Tipton will provide an update on some of the work he is doing in Washington on behalf of the 3rd Congressional District, as well as take your questions on the issues that are on your mind. If you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad, and we will get through as many questions as possible during the course of the call. As we wait for some of those questions to make their way through, we do have a survey question for you tonight. And so you can answer it by pushing numbers on your phone keypad. And I'll go ahead and start that now. So we're asking for responses to the statement, I feel the economy is on the right track. Press 1 for strongly agree, 2 for somewhat agree, 3 for somewhat disagree, 4 for strongly disagree, or 5 for unsure. Again, I feel the economy is on the right track. 1, strongly agree, 2, somewhat agree, 3, somewhat disagree, 4, strongly disagree, or 5, unsure. And then again, for those of you who are just joining us, if you would like to ask a question at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad, and we will get through as many questions as we can during the course of this call. Now we're going to go and take our first question of the evening, and that is this is Steve in Pueblo.
Hi, Steve. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Yeah, thank you, Congressman, for calling us tonight. Hey, I was wondering, you mentioned the USMCA. What are the chances and when is Congress going to actually get this on the floor and pass it?
Well, and I appreciate that, Steve. This is going to be important, as I tried to note in the opening statement, to be able to create jobs. One thing that we've advocated for and reached out actually to Secretary Ross on was an issue for the potato farmers down in the San Luis Valley. We were supposed to have a reciprocal agreement between the U.S. and Mexico for potatoes, for avocados. Unfortunately, Mexico has been able to have a competitive advantage in terms of us importing their goods and restricting our access to it. So we're hoping that's going to be able to move forward. We've also been standing up for the steel industry in Pueblo, since that's where you're from, to make sure that American steel is going to be able to be competitive on the market as well in terms of foreign imports that are coming in. With the USMCA, this is a piece of legislation that I believe, if put on the floor by Speaker Pelosi, will pass. We just need to have it actually brought to the floor, and I think that the benefits that we'll see will be remarkable literally in the country. As I've noted, conservatively right now, they are estimating that 175,000 new jobs can be created. And I think it is worthy of note that currently we have the lowest unemployment rate in the United States that we've had in 50 years. So passing this trade agreement with the agreement that the President just recently made with Japan as well unilaterally to be able to have the beef exports going out, we're seeing good opportunities in our district, in our state, to have the benefits of free and fair trade actually come into play. And so we'll continue to encourage Speaker Pelosi to be able to bring that to the floor. We're hearing some rumors right now that there's a fair possibility that she will do that before the end of the year. If we care about jobs, if we care about opportunity for our people, we care about wages for the people in the United States, this will be a good piece of legislation to be able to move forward.
And for those of you who are just joining us this evening, this is a live teletown hall with Congressman Scott Tipton. And over the course of this call, Congressman Tipton will answer as many of your questions as possible, as well as provide an update on some of the work he is doing in Washington on behalf of the 3rd Congressional District. With that, we're going to go ahead and get to our next question, and that is Ernie in Pueblo.
Hi, Ernie. Thanks for being with us.
Yes, hi, Congressman. I appreciate you taking my question. I had a long question to ask, but I'm going to cut it. I'm going to give you the Cliff Note one.
Okay.
What really bothers me, we just here recently, within the last year or two, we had an election where these red flags were passed by the state. And what I would like to know is, in that process of that law, you're not having due process. Now, I see our own president is going through the same thing. So I'm just wondering if it would be possible for you and your cohorts to maybe put a bill together to rule against or overrule the states that have these red flags without due process. To me, that's not fair. I'm a Vietnam vet, and I didn't go to war to risk my life to give up any constitutional rights, and especially for our president or myself.
Well, and I appreciate your concern on that. I think that many of us had concerns on what we saw move through our state legislature to where we eliminated due process. You can be accused of something, and you have to be able to prove yourself innocent, completely contrary to our judicial system to be able to address. We've always got to be able to maintain that. And we'd have to look. We do have states' rights issues to be able to set the boundaries within a state for what's going to be determined by a state legislature. And but that's something that we can check into, Ernie. But I think the bottom line is what you point to. We always need to make sure that we're upholding our judicial system, the right and the presumption of innocence before guilt, making sure that we're protecting our Second Amendment rights and our entire Bill of Rights under the Constitution.
We want to thank everybody for joining us this evening as people continue to get on the call. This is a live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. And over the course of this call, Congressman Tipton will provide an update on some of the issues he's working on in Washington on behalf of the 3rd Congressional District, and also take the questions from you on the issues that are on your mind. If you would like to ask him a question at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad, and we will get through as many questions as possible during the course of this call. For our next question, we are going to go to, sorry, technical difficulty here. We're going to go to Will in Crested Butte.
Hi, Will.
Hey, Congressman. My name is Will. I live in Crested Butte, Colorado. You know, a place that relies heavily on recreation and the businesses associated with that. So I was just wondering why you didn't support the CORE Act that passed the House relatively recently.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. As you're probably aware, we'd had a draft piece of legislation, which we've just put out in the 3rd Congressional District, held roundtables called the REC Act. And we looked at the CORE Act and had conversations in regards to it. We were just notified of it the day before it had been dropped, and so hadn't been included in that process. And we'd had our REC Act that we've been working on in terms of draft legislation. So there are some good elements, as you note, Will, within the CORE Act. But we had put forward 11 amendments, which were, I believe, non-controversial, good common sense amendments to be able to improve the bill, to make sure that in the Kira County, as an example, that the forest management agreement with the Forest Service in regards to the recreation area would be kept in place. We all have, you live in Crested Butte, one of the prettiest places in Colorado, but we all have that threat of wildfire that can come through. So to be able to have the management by the Forest Service was a good, sensible amendment that was put forward that was rejected. In fact, we put forward 11 different amendments to the REC Act, to the CORE Act that were not accepted. And I would like to note, not all elements of the CORE Act were bad. There's many that we could support. And had we been included in that process and the outreach had been done, we may have been able to get to a yes on the bill. But we did put those forward. Those were rejected. We have now been in contact with the Senate, visited with Lisa Murkowski, whose committee that it will go through, to be able to put forward again those amendments because they aren't overreaching. It's to be able to make sure that grazing is going to be codified, that the high-altitude training facility, which is necessary and has been recognized by an amendment that I passed with broad bipartisan support through the House of Representatives as being critical for American national security, will be codified, and we'll make sure that the men and women who service in the military have those training facilities to be able to work out of. Was not included into the CORE Act. We need to make sure that we have adequate water protections and also understand the threat of wildfire and how that will impact our water and our communities as well. That was not included within that CORE Act. And so this was part of the process, and the bill has now moved on to the Senate for their consideration. We are following up with our Senate colleagues to see if we can make those improvements on the bill to be able to get it to the point to where we can have something that's going to reflect all of the concerns that we have heard, which were not fully inclusive even at this point, but to make sure that we're making sure that we're doing something that I think we all agree on, being able to protect our public lands, being able to protect our communities, being able to protect our water, and being able to make sure that the military who works in our district has the best safety that they can in terms of carrying out some dangerous missions in terms of their training.
We want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. This is a live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. And for those of you just joining us, over the course of this call, Congressman Tipton will provide an update on some of the work he's doing in Washington on behalf of Colorado's 3rd Congressional District, as well as take your questions on the issues that are on your mind. Just a reminder, if you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment at any time, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. We thank everybody who is trying to get through now for your patience. There are a number of callers in the queue, and we are trying to get through as many of these as possible during the course of this call. With that in mind, we are going to move on to Patricia in Montrose for our next call.
Hi, Patricia. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, this is Patricia. I'm calling from Montrose. I am a veteran. My husband was a veteran, and he's passed away due to Agent Orange. But anyway, what I'm calling about is the care that I receive from the VA sometimes is really substandard to what the care should be. And it's mainly with their contractors, like in Montrose, they have for the oxygen, they have a contractor out in Delta. And I don't know why the VA doesn't monitor them closer to see because they brought equipment that was used by a smoker, oxygen equipment, and that to me is unacceptable. But anyway, who does check on these contractors that provide care for the VA if they're up to standard or not?
Well, thanks, Patricia. I think you point to something that's obviously near and dear to all of our hearts, and that is taking care of our veterans. The VA does have their own protocols and their own standards that they are to enforce. If you see some that aren't being enforced properly, please feel free, some of these, and we can follow up with you after this conversation, that we can certainly reach out to the VA and question them on. Did have the opportunity to be able to visit the clinic in Montrose. We did see some pretty innovative things there in terms of patient care and access to that care, which I think was pretty positive. Just recently toured the VA hospital up in Grand Junction as well. We're seeing some good moves for the VA in terms of health care, in terms of making sure that we're fulfilling that promise to our men and women who have served in the United States military. But specifically, again, to your question, the criteria is set out in terms of the protocols by the VA in terms of the equipment that's to be used and the methods in which it's to be applied as well. If any of our veterans that are on this call are having issues, we encourage you to reach out to our office because we can help with that, and reach out to the VA to be able to get some of those answers directly from them. So I appreciate you calling, Patricia.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening for this live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. And thank you for those of you who are waiting to ask a question. Real quick, we have another survey question for you this evening, and I'm going to go through it and tell you what the prompts are here. So with the statement, I am satisfied with the cost and quality of my health care. Push 1 if you strongly agree. 2 if you somewhat agree. 3 if you somewhat disagree. 4 if you strongly disagree. Or 5 if you are unsure. Again, I am satisfied with the cost and quality of my health care. 1 if you strongly disagree, or strongly agree, sorry. 2 if you somewhat agree. 3 if you somewhat disagree, or 4 if you strongly disagree, 5 if you are unsure. For our next question, we're going to go to Molly in Steamboat Springs.
Hi, Molly. I appreciate you being on.
Thank you. Hi. I've been watching the impeachment hearings, and I can't actually take my eyes away just because it's been so compelling. And it seems to me that Republicans have made up their mind how they feel about impeachment, and Democrats as well have made up their mind about impeachment. And so I assume, since you're a Republican, you are against impeachment. But so I wonder, what specifically has to happen? What do you need to hear specifically or learn for you to support impeachment?
I think what every American wants to be able to have, Molly. This is something that is a very serious charge, and something that we all need to be taking very seriously in terms of looking at the actual evidence that's going to be presented. We'd actually voted, I had voted, to be able to have full transparency, to be able to release the transcript from the whistleblower, to be able to release the transcript of the President's conversation with President Zelensky, and those have all happened, to be able to do that. And so as we've now gone through the hearings, and you just noted that you've been watching them all the time, which is probably a benefit that many of us haven't actually had. But what we've had in terms of some of the reports that are coming back is we're getting second and third-hand interpretations of what somebody overheard or somebody told someone that went on a conversation. As you listen to the hearings, and I've been able to review the hearings that took place under the Intelligence Committee, and we've just had one hearing under the Judiciary Committee now. It is an interpretation as opposed to first-hand information. When we look at previous impeachments that took place, the only one under President Clinton, you had something direct to be able to point to, first-hand information that was going to be something that you could have a vote for impeachment on. So at this time, with no direct knowledge that's being shown in any of the testimony that has come forward, does this rise to the level of impeachment? I don't believe it does. Can you question how some things are phrased? I believe you can. But in terms of an impeachable offense, I do not believe that we have had the evidence that's been presented so far to be able to achieve that.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening for this live Teletown Hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. And thank you to those of you who are patiently waiting to ask a question this evening. And for those of you who wish to ask a question, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad at any time, and we will get you in the queue as quickly as possible. Before we get to our next question, we do have a final survey question for the evening, and that is with the statement, I have been personally affected or know someone affected by prescription drug or heroin abuse in my community. Press 1 for yes or 2 for no. Again, I have been personally affected or know someone affected by prescription drug or heroin abuse in my community. 1 for yes or 2 for no. For our next question, we're going to go to Chris in Gunnison.
Hi, Chris.
Hi. I have a question for you. I am almost 70 years old, and I'm raising my grandson with no child support. And all I ever hear is how they want to cut Social Security. I worked for my Social Security, and it's a separate, fund from, my check is not costing the American people anything. I paid into it. What are you going to do to protect my Social Security and hopefully expand it?
I appreciate your concern and your circumstances, Chris. I've been very consistent all along. We'll stand up for your Social Security. Any calls to be able to reduce that, you point to the fact. You had a payroll deduction. This isn't a government handout. It came out of your paycheck. It was matched by your employer. If you put in $1, it was matched by your employer with another $1 to make sure that those resources were going to be there when it came time for you to retire and to be able to use that money to be able to help supplement your retirement. So we will stand up to make sure that we will not have the reductions. In fact, I think that there's a nominal increase that is now being paid out of Social Security this year for a cost of living adjustment, which probably doesn't cover some of the inflation that we've had, even though it's been nominal that's going on. But we will stand up for your Social Security because you actually point to it very well. This is not a government program that's just handed out free money to you. It's money that you earned, had deducted from your paycheck, and your employer matched those dollars as well. And we need to be able to protect that. We will fight to do that very thing.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us again for this live Teletown Hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. And we do have one final survey question that's currently running, and that is, I have been personally affected or know someone affected by prescription drug or heroin drug abuse in my community. Press 1 for yes or 2 for no. And then if you would like to receive periodic email updates from Congressman Tipton on the work he is doing for the district, please press 7 now, and we will get someone to collect your email address for you and get you signed up. Or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. And with that, we're going to move to our next question, and that is with Kevin in Pueblo.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for taking time to be with us.
Hi, Scott. Merry Christmas, by the way. I'm calling from Pueblo, and I just, I have a concern. With this new governor, Jared Polis, I feel like he is attacking the Second Amendment, and people like my father and my great-grandfathers dating back to 1721 have fought to defend the rights of the American people. The Second Amendment is just important as the First Amendment. So I'd like to know what the congressmen are going to do about this. And I'm a native Coloradan. I was born in Colorado Springs, and now I plan to move to Arizona because I feel like gun owners are not welcome here in the state of Colorado.
Well, I appreciate exactly what you're pointing to, Kevin, and something we've noted a number of times. Every one of our rights under the Constitution are something that need to be protected. There's a purpose that they were put in, and it's something that we as Americans have to be making sure that we do stand up for to be able to protect them. That's something I know out of our office that we are committed to be able to protect, free speech, First Amendment rights to speak, if those are important. So are our Second Amendment rights, and Third and Fourth through our 10 amendments and each subsequent one that has been passed to the Constitution of the United States. They're there for a reason, and we do need to be able to protect them, because once you start eroding them, it is a very slippery slope in terms of how other rights could be diminished as well. So we will stand up for that, and I appreciate your concern on it, and hope you'll stay in Colorado, Kevin.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening, and thank you to those of you who are patiently waiting to ask a question. We're trying to get through as many as possible before the end of this call. We're going to go ahead and jump right into our next question here, and that is going to be, let me see here, Kate in Carbondale.
Hi, Kate.
For taking my question. I am just turned 70, and I am extremely concerned about whether we are going to be able to pass on to our children and children's children a livable world. And I am wondering what actions you are taking to address the problems that we have in that arena, particularly here on the Western Slope with respect to oil and gas extraction from public lands, which are pushing more and more greenhouse gases into our environment. And I would like to say, and I know people disagree with me, but we're talking about science. We're not talking about belief, and we're not talking about politics. This is about science, and this is what is happening to our planet. And I feel like we are not doing justice to our kids and their children if we're not trying to address the problem.
Well, and I appreciate your comments and your question, Kate. I think there's a lot more common ground for every Coloradoan, every American than we often speak to. We all like the thought and actually want to make sure that we have clean water and that we do have clean air. What we have done, I noted in my opening statement, I'd actually had legislation that was put into place called the Small Hydroelectric and Jobs Act to be able to create some of the cleanest energy that we possibly can. I've introduced, passed through the House of Representatives with bipartisan support, the Planning for America's Energy Future Act, and calling for all of the above legislation. And we enumerate that literally in the bill, from our traditional fuel sources and also in terms of all of the renewables as well. We can do this using technology. EPA came out with their reports in terms of CO2 emissions. The U.S. has actually been seeing the right track, meaning they're coming down in terms of even with increased energy development in some areas, we've seen those numbers actually coming down. I think that we're in concert on that, and it's going to be an all-of-the-above solution to be able to not only provide for our families and jobs, but also to make sure that we do have a healthy environment for our children to be able to grow and to be able to prosper in as well. And so we'll continue to support those legislations to be able to create not only the opportunities for renewable energy, just a new bill that we'd recently become a co-sponsor of is for on some of the public lands to be able to make sure that if we do develop any of the public resources for energy with renewables, to make sure that we're getting something back, much in the royalty system, as you see off of oil and gas that you had noted, back to our communities to be able to use for the benefit of our families and for our futures as well. This is something that I think as Americans, we have a lot more common ground than we often like to think. I know of no one who is against a good environment, a clean environment, and something that we ought to encourage and to be able to find the balances and the ways forward through technology and through development, not only of the alternative sources, but what we're going to have to be relying on, in many cases, our traditional fuel sources as well. So do appreciate your concern and passion on this issue, and I think that if we're willing to work together, we can find that proper balance.
And we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening for this live teletown hall meeting, and thank you to those of you who are waiting so patiently to ask a question. We're going to go ahead and jump right into our next question, and that is Rebecca in Cortez.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi there. I'm 72, and I moved from the Colorado Springs, El Paso County to Montezuma County here in Cortez. And I find that the overall view of medical care is very, very poor here. Most people have to travel to Utah, Durango, Farmington, New Mexico. And I see Cortez as a beautiful place. There's extreme poverty with natives, soup kitchens, that type of thing. But if there were the proper professionals that really had an interest, this place would be boom town like Colorado Springs. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place. And my husband and I are on a meager Social Security. We love it, but the medical care here is so poor. Sometimes I've been told even by retirees that it's dangerous. And so it causes a great deal of anxiety whether or not our state is interested and has a focus in the Montezuma County area for health. And the second question I have is, has anyone ever considered that jobs could increase amongst the elderly and those who have maybe a disability if there were more ergonomics provided? For example, when a cashier stands all day on no mat or even some mat, they could have a swing arm to rest their body. It would cut down the cost of medical liability and increase productivity and energy. So has anyone in the government considered by increasing ergonomics, simplistic ergonomics, not expensive, would increase the labor force?
Well, thanks, Rebecca. I appreciate your concern on the healthcare issues. We've toured a lot of our hospitals. I toured Southwest Memorial Hospital here a few months back. Had an opportunity to be able to visit with the doctors and some of the staff that is there that seem very dedicated to making sure that they're providing quality health care in the communities that we have, and also been very supportive of the community health care clinics. Was just in Pueblo and toured the facility there, and got to be able to see some, again, dedicated professionals that are concerned about people's health and being able to deliver it to them in an affordable way. So this is something that we do focus on. I know that there are a variety of different grants. One of the big issues that we often have in rural Colorado in terms of access to quality health care is simply of the availability of providers, being able to bring them back into the local areas and to be able to provide that service for areas that truly need it. So we've been supportive of legislation to be able to actually make sure that we're getting some of those healthcare professionals out of the metropolitan areas into rural healthcare to be able to deliver some of those services as well. In regards to some of the ergonomics end of it, there may well be, we'll be happy to check into that. If there are any programs to be able to provide some of that, I know a number of our private companies are currently starting to provide those tools for their workers because workplace safety and health has become so incredibly important, as it should. And we'll, I believe, continue to see the private sector as well continue to try and address that.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. And for those of you who have recently joined us, this is a live teletown hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. And if you would like to ask Congressman Tipton a question or make a comment, please press the 0 key on your phone keypad. For those of you patiently waiting to ask a question, we're trying to get through as many as possible during the course of this call, and we thank you for your patience. And if you would like to receive periodic email updates from Congressman Tipton on the work he's doing for the district, please press 7, or you can also sign up by visiting the website at www.tipton.house.gov. We're going to take our next question from Matthew in Pueblo.
Hi, Matthew. Thanks for being with us.
How are you doing tonight?
Doing well, thank you.
Good to hear. So my question is majorly with infrastructure because I currently work for CDOT, and I see that we have a lot of issues, not just trash or anything like that. It's, you know, trying to expand the highways, and I know the GAP has had a lot of fun doing their stuff, but I know to add a bridge or a lane on a bridge, it costs $350 million. But where's the money coming from right now with weed being big, and we have this big, you know, influx of people, and our economy is doing so great, but we're kind of hitting the backlash, and a lot of our roads are suffering for it.
Well, and I appreciate your concern on that. You know, there were some hopes early on to be able to get a broad bipartisan infrastructure package put into place, something that needs ultimately to be done because just traveling through Pueblo to be able to see some of the construction that's necessary on I-25, one of the most dangerous stretches of I-25 having to run through Pueblo, to be able to see some of the improvements there. But when we're looking at roads and bridges throughout our state and throughout our country, we've had a lot of deferred maintenance in terms of actually being able to address that. And the issue is really a lot of the costs that are coming now with infrastructure development. One area that we have looked at in terms of some savings is to be able to look at some of the regulations that are in place. As an example, if you're going to go in and repave a road, you do an environmental assessment, which costs money. We all want to be able to protect the environment, but the road is already there. So if you stay within those same perimeters, do we need the full study to be able to take place? Can we maybe have some cost savings to be able to make sure that we're building out some of that infrastructure? Something worthwhile exploring to make sure that we're achieving both ends, not only protecting the environment, but being able to have more affordable infrastructure development. I think you and I, Matthew, probably both recognize and agree that that infrastructure, you working with CDOT, is critical to the economics of the state and to public safety as well as our folks are traveling. I think you and I probably driven the same road as you go north, and the construction that's going on right now and the costs that are being associated with that are big dollars that ultimately do have to be paid for. And so we're looking at ways to be able to find some of those resources and ways to be able to reduce some of the costs as well while maintaining that quality. And I suspect that we will continue to see not a broad infrastructure package that will move through the House and the Senate, but probably incremental steps moving to that end that we all need, obviously know that needs to be addressed. So I do appreciate your concern on that issue, and it's something that I know at the federal level and at the state level as well is under great consideration and study to be able to achieve those ends.
And thank you, everybody, for your patience and for joining us this evening during this live teletown hall with Congressman Scott Tipton. We are trying to get through as many calls as possible, and we will so over the next little over 10 minutes here. But for those of you who are still waiting to ask a question and have not gotten the opportunity by the time the call must come to a close, you will have the opportunity to leave a voicemail message that will get to Congressman Tipton, and you will receive a call back on your message. So please hang with us. We're going to try to get through as many live as possible, and then for those who did not get the chance to ask your call or ask your question during this call, please stay on the line and leave a message, and we will get back to you on that. For our next call, we are going to go to Patrick in Grand Junction.
Hi, Patrick. Thanks for taking time.
Hey, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Hope you're doing well.
Good, yeah. I grew up in Montezuma County as you did. I now live in Mesa County, Colorado. And regarding one of the headlines today, the lowest unemployment rate since I think 1979, 2.6 unemployment rate. That's all great, but there's so many people in Mesa County and in Montezuma County that they may have a job and they may not have a job, but the ones that do have a job are just not making enough to support a family. I think they're just wondering what you're doing about what do you have in mind about pay equality, and in addition to these young people that are just getting out of college and have these college educations are out of hand, the expense of them, and these kids that have these student loans, trying to start a family, trying to buy a home, and they have so much college education debt that they don't qualify for loans. So I'm kind of covering a myriad of different things here, but I'll let you talk now.
Well, thanks, Patrick. And as you probably noted, we are starting to see for the first time over the last 3 years, actually, we are starting to see wages starting to go up. One of the big challenges that we've had is we've also seen, unfortunately, a lot of our energy costs have gone up. Other transportation costs have gone up. Some of the housing costs have gone up. And it's something that I think all of us as Americans are certainly trying to be able to deal with. The best thing I think that we can do, and I've seen firsthand evidence of that from working in my business, as the economy is moving, it does have upward wage pressures where employers will pay more. You'd mentioned the lowest unemployment rate since 1979. Colorado, we're even lower. We're at 2.6%. And is that in every community? It's not, but that's a statewide average. But that does start to put upward pressure in terms of wages for employers just to be able to get good employees, to be able to pay them more, to be able to come in and work. And part of this is in the private sector end of the world. And certainly, I think our philosophy in business, and I think many small businesses, which is the number one employer, to make sure that they're trying to treat their workers as fairly as they possibly can, because it's a team sport with every business being able to rely and need everyone who does work there. In regards to some of the students and some of the loans that they have, this is a question that we have actually been addressing with some of the higher education institutions, even in Colorado, coming in, asking the question on why did we see double-digit increases in terms of tuition cost for students going in when inflation was relatively low over the course of the last decade. Not sure that we got a great answer. A lot of our schools, if we look at Colorado Mesa, Fort Lewis College, down in Gunnison, down in Alamosa, have affordable tuition there, but it's our larger schools where we've seen some of the greatest rates of tuition increase and the impacts that that's having on students. A couple of things that we're looking at are some of the fixed rates that they do have in terms of the interest that they have to pay to be able to pay back the loan that they signed for that college education, to be able to have some flexibility to be able to lower that and to be able to lower some of the costs for the students as well. So I do understand economically in terms of pay and education and that we do have a variety of issues, and we are paying attention to these and trying to be able to find some solutions to be able to provide some benefit and some relief to it as well. So I appreciate your thoughts, Patrick.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. We're going to have time here for another one or two questions before we're going to have to wrap up the call with some closing remarks. But for those of you who are still waiting to ask a question and did not get the chance to do so on the call, please stay on the line. At the conclusion of the call, you will have the opportunity to leave a voicemail that will get to Congressman Tipton, and you will receive a response back to your question. For our next question, we are going to go to Joseph in Glenwood Springs.
Hi, Joseph.
Hi, Congressman. I was calling to find out if you can help as far as affordable housing. What can be done to keep rent from raising, as well as housing itself going up and up and up. Being in Glenwood Springs, it's a mountain town, and mountain towns, don't have as much employment, but they cater to the wealthy. Also, a follow-on question having to do with senior nursing home costs. For-profit nursing homes charging a minimum of $4,000 a month. Somebody's making a lot of money off seniors. I don't know if there's a government-provided program for senior housing as well.
Okay. Yeah, and Joseph, you hit on something I know you're aware of. We hear in a lot of our resort communities in terms of affordable housing. Was recently in Glenwood, had an opportunity to be able to sit down with community members, some of the builders. One builder that I was talking to said he was building what was labeled as affordable housing, and I think the cost of the unit was going to be $327,000, which for many people in our district is not an affordable home. But when I questioned on what is driving the cost, he said the value of the land, and then also some of the requirements that are put into place in building. He did note that many of those are good. We want to make sure that we do have the monitors in place and to make sure that if a fire breaks out, that an alarm does go off, that we've got safety in terms of the construction that's going on. But he did note that there are some areas to where they could have some savings, but some of the regulatory costs do drive up the cost of those homes in the mountain communities and also in other areas of rural Colorado as well. So this is a challenge for all of our local communities, and I think in terms of some of the development, we do have local zoning boards and planning commissions that are going to be in place as we do build out some of those developments for recreation in some of the resort communities. It would probably be a sensible thing to make sure that something is put into place to be able to have housing for the people that are going to be working and providing the services at those resort areas and in those communities. And I think when we're talking about some of the private senior nursing homes that are out, they do have different costs that are associated with it. A lot of this in visiting with them, again, they do have requirements that they have to meet on the federal, on the state, and on the local level to be able to provide that service and to be able to recoup some of those costs. As we do get an aging population, this is probably going to be a growing issue that we do need to be looking at some good private sector solutions to be able to help lower that cost while making sure that we've got a safe and an affordable facility for seniors in need to be able to move into at appropriate times, to be able to address. And we are looking at some of the regulatory issues that we might be able to address out of Congress in terms of some of the medical care that is going to be provided and the costs associated with that. One of the calls that we'd had earlier today in terms of some of the VA care, I think it was Pat out of Montrose was talking about some of the oxygen equipment coming through to be able to look at some of the costs that are associated with that, making sure that we've got a safe product that's being delivered but at an affordable price for people that are going to be on a fixed income.
And we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening for this live Teletown Hall meeting with Congressman Scott Tipton. We are coming to the end of our time for the Teletown Hall. But for those of you who did not get the chance to ask your question live on the call, please stay on the line and leave us a message, and we will get back to you as soon as possible, and Congressman Tipton will review those messages. So please stay on the line and leave us a message. I do want to leave you with a phone number as well. If you are experiencing any issues in dealing with a federal agency, that can include Medicare, Social Security, IRS, et cetera, VA, please give us a call and we may be able to assist you with that. And the best number to call would be our Pueblo office, and that is 719-542-1073. Again, that's 719-542-1073. And with that, we'll turn it back over to Congressman Tipton for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Josh. And again, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your evening to be able to be with us. Do appreciate you taking time in your schedule to be able to ask some of these questions. And again, I'll emphasize what Josh had noted. If we didn't get an opportunity during this time to be able to directly answer your question, if you will leave a message, we will get back to you. I will look at those. Your feedback is going to be important, and we'll be out throughout our district here. I think we are in session here until the 20th of December, as we're noting right now, but look forward to seeing you in our communities, and do want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas as we move into the holiday season. And again, thank you for being with us this evening.